move on. Hello, everybody. Welcome here at the opening of the symposium Redesign the Future. Sehr geehrte Damen und Herren, herzlich willkommen. Ich darf Sie alle ganz herzlich zur Eröffnung des Symposiums Redesign the Future begrüßen. My name is Eberhard Schrempf. I'm the director of the Creative Industry Styria Networking Cluster Organization, the director of the Designmonat Graz, a festival, and the organizer and host of the symposium in cooperation with the FH Joanneum Institute for Design and Communication and the Green Tech Cluster Styria. We are celebrating the 12th edition of Festival Design Month this year. And the city of Graz is celebrating its 10th anniversary as a UNESCO City of Design in the network of the creative cities of the UNESCO. The program this year contains about 91 events in 30 days with about 77 involved partners, designers, studios, companies from about 30 nations. A very warm welcome to all panelists, to all designers who are involved in the program in the next 2 days, and a very warm welcome to all our international guests from abroad, especially from Design Cities Network all around the world. Well, I know in Asia, it's very late. In America, it's very early. Anyway, we feel very pleased to have you with us, and of course, a warm welcome to all our friends from Austria, and especially to all our students and the students from FH Joanneum here in Graz joining us. Well, this is a different year. Many questions have been asked, and we, as the designers, we know very well how to ask the right questions. Meanwhile, as the design experts, we are trained to focus on that point, asking the right questions, having analytic and critical view from a distance and also in the detail. Everything is clear and nothing is more blurred than the future now. The future was already constructed, the architecture was settled, ready to build, and now the world is in disorder. We have to solve a climate crisis, we have to solve a pandemic crisis, we are facing a social crisis, followed by a financial crisis. So almost nothing is what it was. We have to rethink and we have to redesign the future. With the program Focus Better Future, the Design Month Festival creates a platform to put design into this topic, into the context of this topic. The focus of rethinking on a better future is embedded in almost all areas of the program this year, following the question, what can design do and what can designers do? What is their contribution? What is the role of design in this context? I very much believe that creativity is one of the most important resources. And so all of you are now discussing with us, certainly also, but still we are a minority. But now the importance of creativity has also reached the agenda of the European Union. And I'm very pleased that you, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has started the initiative for the new European Bauhaus. It calls us to imagine and build together a sustainable, inclusive future that is beautiful on our eyes and minds and souls. So, yeah, let's see. High expectations. But anyway, the importance of this is the fact that the relevance and the creativity and the understanding of the power of design reached to the top of the European agenda. I'm satisfied with this important first step. Okay, so far. It's all about high expectations. I like to be surprised, if you want to. And yes, of course, I'm convinced and a believer in the power of design, but ultimately it's about how we can transform academic and intellectual knowledge into reality on everyday's life without wasting too much time. No. My advice is less talking, more doing. That brings me to the topic right now. The creative community, of course, has not only the tools and the talents to address complex challenges, but it addresses the architecture of humanity, human relationship in a complex society. And it addresses the mindset of change. And this is the topic the speakers and the researchers are reflecting in the next 2 days in our symposium, Redesign the Future. We have international panelists from Italy, Mexico, New Zealand, Portugal, Great Britain, and Austria, of course. I'm very happy to have Stuart Walker with us. Welcome, Stuart. Great to have you here, being with us. He will open the symposium with a keynote speech on the topic of design after a pandemic. After Stuart Walker's keynote, a short break. We have a short break. We dive into the first panel. All panelists are led by a facilitator moderating 3 speakers. Each gives a short impulse speech presentation of 8 minutes maximum. You, as the audience, are invited to reflect with comments and statements, asking your questions in the chat. The panelists' presentations are kept very short so that there is enough time to have intensive discussions. So far, so clear. And now, it is a pleasure to me to welcome Karl Stocker and hand over the moderation to him. I don't think a long introduction is necessary, but Karl is a scientist and a professor at the Graz University. He is head of the Institute of Design and Communication at FH Joanneum University for Applied Science. And he's an author, he's an historian, he's an exhibition designer, he's a design expert, a companion, a partner, a design critic, a complice for many years to me. And he's a friend, of course. He's the kind of friend who will correct you without mercy. No mercy, yeah, when you are in danger of maybe losing the track. A sparring partner in discourse and in the real life, professionally and personally. Welcome, Karl.
Yeah, thank you, Eberhard, for this really very nice introduction. I appreciate it really very much. And yeah, I'm happy that we are here today and that we can do our design lectures in this very nice environment here. And to go on with the intro, I have to say that as Eberhard mentions, designers should do more and speak less. I have to say that I think the profession designer means really a lot more than it meant 30, 20, or even 10 years ago. And it includes a wide range of approaches, accesses, and definitions. While designers before used to simply create products or carry out graphic tasks, they have now become design strategists who are able to find creative solutions to the most diverse societal and ecological problems, thanks to their different skills and interdisciplinary approaches. Having this in mind, and also the last year of the pandemic, we decided to focus the topic redesigning the future, and we decided to focus it on 3 panels. First, the first panel today, we shall discuss the future of design education, curated by myself. Secondly, tomorrow we go on with changing urban climate, curated and moderated by Bernhard Puttinger from Green Tech Cluster Styria. And third, we will close with a panel about designing for people. And this is curated and moderated by my colleague Sigrid Bürstmeier from the Institute Design and Communication. We shall give you a little preview for tomorrow at the end of today's panel about the sessions. So after this short overview, let's start our symposium. And yeah, I have to say I'm so happy to introduce now our keynote speaker, Stuart Walker. Professor Stuart Walker is chair of Design for Sustainability at Lancaster University, UK, where he co-founded the Imagination Lancaster Design Research Lab. He is also visiting professor of sustainable design at the Kingston University, London, and emeritus professor at University of Calgary, Canada. His research explores environmental, social, and spiritual aspects of sustainability. His conceptual design work has been exhibited internationally, and his numerous books including Sustainable by Design, Design for Life, or Design Realities. These are really quite famous and very, very good books. But let me add 2 personal remarks. I just have to say with Stuart Walker, if you want to do research on sustainability design, please just read his publications. He wrote everything about that. And second, and this is I appreciate very much, Stuart Walker is a kind of researcher who constantly brings new questions into the scientific design discussion. Yeah? He never gives up, yeah? with the books he did. He is always pushing forward new ideas. And I just have to say, read his book, Design and Spirituality, A Philosophy of Material Cultures, and check out his article in the Designmonat magazine. I highly recommend this. Please read it. And now, please, Mr. Walker, let's start now with the keynote, Design After Pandemic Culture. A warm welcome from my side. Please start with the presentation.
Thank you very much for that very nice introduction. I'm very pleased to be here talking to everyone today at Designmonat Graz, and I'd like to extend my thanks to everyone who has worked so hard in bringing this weekend's events to fruition under very difficult circumstances. This will be quite a short talk, about 20 minutes. I've called it Design After a Pandemic, and in it, I'll be looking at some of the issues affecting us today and how we might take a different and hopefully better, more positive direction forward. So I'll just share my slides on the screen. Despite all the human tragedy and pain caused by this pandemic, potentially we can learn something from it about those things that really matter. So in this talk, I'm going to discuss how design can contribute to a new post-pandemic future that doesn't simply go back to what we had before, but instead makes more committed efforts to work towards sustainability, inclusivity, and resilience. 6 months into the COVID-19 crisis, the UN published a research roadmap for recovery. Is everybody seeing the slides okay? Okay, good. Just to check. 6 months into the COVID-19 crisis, the UN published a research roadmap for recovery. It points out how the pandemic has intensified global disparities and says recovery will require strengthening healthcare systems, expanding social programs, protecting food supplies, livelihoods, and small businesses, reinforcing multilateral collaborations and debt relief, ensuring environmental resilience, and improving social cohesion through empowerment, equity, and good governance. It's a long and very ambitious list. The need for action on a global scale offers a unique opportunity for transformative change, to reimagine societies. But despite its good intentions and its scope, the vision of the UN report struck me as rather conventional and unimaginative, particularly because the main emphasis is squarely on demonstrating the power of global science and encouraging the implementation of a range of science-based strategies. But there is little mention of the humanities, only a fleeting nod to the arts, and no mention of creativity. In dealing with the pandemic, we rightly praise the Herculean efforts made by research scientists in developing vaccines. No thinking person would dispute the enormous contributions of science. But in framing the path to recovery as it does, there is a real danger of simply repeating the same mistakes of the past by addressing the broader and deeper questions with exactly the same kind of progress-entrenched thinking that has caused so much harm to people, other species, and natural environments around the world. Modern societies have long believed in the self-generated myth of progress, driven primarily by the contributions of science and understood as a continual upward trajectory of improvement and betterment. The UN, in privileging the place of science over other areas of human knowledge and expertise, appears to be maintaining and reinforcing this patently false assumption. The belief in progress has been crumbling for some time. The future no longer holds much promise. As Sachs has said, it is more a place of fear than of hope. And philosopher John Gray points out the hollowness of today's secular faith in progress has been made all too plain in the face of a virus that has caused vast loss of life, untold hardship, family separation, and losses of livelihood, income, education, and opportunity. The pandemic has exposed the weaknesses of globalization and of outsourcing manufacturing and reducing our own production capabilities. And it has allowed us to recognize more acutely those societal roles that really matter when it comes to keeping our communities running in difficult times, such as health workers, supermarket staff, refuse collectors, and food bank volunteers. The UN's wide-ranging set of recovery goals cannot be achieved solely through the contributions of science. A far more holistic approach is needed, one that will also depend on the expertise of educators, philosophers, linguists, policymakers, and those in the creative arts, including the applied arts. It will also require the kinds of joined-up thinking that are so fundamental to traditional knowledge. Only by envisaging more creative, imaginative ways forward and adopting more integrated, balanced, and context-appropriate approaches will we be able to ensure that our scientific knowledge and technological capabilities are accompanied by and in some cases tempered by, humane, ethical, and equitable forms of development. If we are to truly build a more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient future for everyone, we must pay far more attention to the perspectives and belief systems of others, to priorities and aspirations that rise above mundane pragmatism, to values that transcend self and selfishness, and to compassion, empathy, charity, benevolence, and conservation. Greater consideration of these will enable us to position the contributions of science within a larger vista of human significance and meaning. They will ensure that our efforts are guided by values that overcome self-interest, that emphasize concern for other people and nature, and that are respectful of the particularities of place, context, and tradition. Part of a different approach, too, will be dependent on our personal attitudes and aspirations. We have perhaps become too eager to do. We are constantly organizing, developing, launching, announcing, researching, ideating, innovating, and advancing. But in all this rushing, we seem to have lost the ability to simply be. The road to recovery could and should involve far less doing and much more being, seeing, listening, contemplating, and appreciating. This would allow us to benefit from the latest scientific knowledge while also making our subsequent actions more considered, just, and sensitive to people's needs and to the natural environment and other species. Kierkegaard argued that the ethical is the universal, and the highest purpose of the individual is to rise above one's particularity, to pursue the ethical and become the universal. For designers, this does not mean giving up one's sense of creative expression simply to do the bidding of someone else. Rather, it means setting aside egotistic tendencies in order to make a more meaningful contribution. And it points to a form of design that strives to fit seamlessly and harmlessly into the world. To do this, the designer must observe, listen, and familiarize themselves with the particularities of context. This process requires a combination of relinquishment and trust. Relinquishment of self-oriented priorities and trust in a bigger, higher vision. It also means trusting in the creative process and the decisions one makes without knowing all the information, not having all the data, not seeing the full picture, and not knowing precisely what the outcome will be. Mistakes will inevitably be made. We will fall short. But doubts and anxieties of failing cannot paralyze us or stop us from reaching higher. The UN roadmap refers to a range of very large-scale issues and dilemmas that lie beyond the scope and remit of any single designer. Strengthening healthcare, expanding social programs, building multilateral collaborations, improving social cohesions, and so on. Nevertheless, designers have a part to play, and whatever their particular area of contribution, they will be faced with practical questions about the details of form, function, usability, and affordability. It is useful, therefore, to focus the discussion less on grand schemes in some undefined future, and much more on the nitty-gritty day-to-day activities of the present. It is in the here and now that designers have to make decisions while developing specific design outcomes. This is where the rubber hits the road, where theory meets practice. This is where the designer operates. These issues are especially important if we are to learn from the COVID-19 pandemic and build a more just, caring, environmentally responsible and secure future. The pandemic, at least in the early stages of lockdown, saw dramatic reductions in air pollution, skies free of jet trails, views that were clear and bright, wild animals roaming our city streets, and a world that was noticeably quieter, where we were able to hear the birds sing again. We were given an opportunity to pause, to see the world anew and ourselves more clearly, stripped of the busyness, distractions, and headlong rush that modern life had become. A life with no time and perhaps no inclination to look, listen, or even really think. The social separations imposed by the pandemic also allowed us to realize the importance of family, friends, neighbors, and community, and their part in making our lives richer, simply through their presence. It is here that we must begin to rethink the nature of design for sustainable, inclusive, and resilient ways of living, with a renewed commitment to the people and places where we find ourselves. Engaging at this level and in activities that involve face-to-face relationships, where we see others as full human beings, and where we are able to be far more aware of the concrete impacts of our decision-making. This, to use the phrase of Papanek, is design for the real world, open, honest, done in good conscience, and fully accountable. Designers can make a valuable contribution by bringing their thoughtfulness, attention to detail, aesthetic sensitivity, and sense of moral rectitude to the creation of all those things we use in our everyday lives. They can pursue a form of design that is closely attached to and respectful of place, thereby helping create a world in which we feel we belong. This suggests a form of design that is undemonstrative, that draws on tried and tested ways and offers a greater sense of permanence and stability. It is a form of design that helps build skills and expertise within the community and contributes to useful, fulfilling employment. In the research I have been leading in recent years, we have found that many small maker enterprises are already doing this. They tend not to be motivated by money or constantly increasing the size of their business. Instead, they want to contribute to their community, to build sustainable ways of working and create responsible, environmentally friendly outcomes. Design that supports and contributes to these types of businesses can have all kinds of benefits. Locally produced, context-appropriate products and services can help make the most of local resources and other local assets, foster all kinds of community-led solutions, create local inclusive forms of employment, reduce transportation needs and air pollution, reduce waste and public expenditure on disposal and cleanup, and contribute to a robust, resilient, and highly diversified economy. Through such means, we have the opportunity to build collaborative forms of multi-generational enterprises that are capable of preserving and sustaining those things we value most. This means eliminating excess, overproduction, endless novelty, and waste, and focusing on those things that allow our designs to become tangible expressions of people, place, and tradition, and manifestations of both cultural meaning and sufficiency. So in ending, I will leave you with these final points, and I'd be happy if there's time to respond to any questions or comments you might have. So thank you for your attention.
Geht schon? Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much for this very impressive lecture. I would like to ask you if you can share some time with us. Would it be possible to join our panel and to join the discussion? This would be really great if you can share some time with us.
Of course, yes.
Fantastic. Okay, super. So we have now a short coffee break for 15 minutes, and we go on exactly in 15 minutes. And yeah, you are all welcome, and thank you again for this presentation.
Thank you.
15:45 we go on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, dear students. Yeah, I'm happy to start now panel 1, the future of design education. Let me give you at the beginning some ideas. Design has accompanied the development of humankind from the beginning, and especially in the last 150 years, was actively involved in the development of the modern industrial society. And this is also true for the role of design in the information society. This results in a high social responsibility for the future, which reflects in the curricula of traditional universities as well as universities of applied sciences. In design education worldwide, you can see design nowadays starts to be described as an improvement of the status quo as well as innovation. Design is also being described as a contradiction to the common perception of design that merely aims aesthetic styling. And it is rather the question of a holistic perspective, which also takes ethical aspects into account. Therefore, a modern design education is also an investment into shaping the future. Designers dealing with social and sustainable topics, this is not a new phenomena. Like our keynote speaker mentioned before, and he named, of course, Viktor Papanek, who in 1971 jolted the design community with his book Design for the Real World. At this time, he was ridiculed because his radio for the third world, made from a used tin can, was not elaborated aesthetically enough for the design community. Of course, this mirrors the spirit at that time, when the mass consumption was reaching its peak and many designers thought they would only achieve fame and honor with aesthetical products. Nowadays, it is really questionable why designers should still use their energy for designing products of which there are already 100,000 versions still exist. In that sense, a lot of potential of design energy is available for more important issues. Indeed, many designers today are active in initiatives and NGOs to help repair and improve the world. I would say it's all about social commitment. As a design institute of a university, we have the obligation and the responsibility to commit ourselves to society and to work on the improvement of the world. I believe that we should support and guide young people and, in particular, our students to develop a design attitude. But what kind of attitude? Our approach at the Institute of Design and Communication is that we think design is a very good means to improve the life of all people, not only of a minority, by taking into account social and sustainable principles. First, we definitely don't see design as an investment goodie for people who don't know what else to do with their money. Secondly, we don't see design as a means for adornment to enable aesthetic distinction. And third, design is never only aesthetics, but always connected to a content. So, this is a few ideas starting the panel, and let's see what our speakers mean. And I'd like to introduce now our first speaker. Our first speaker is Luisa Boccietta. She's an independent professional architect and designer. Hello, Luisa.
Hello.
And former president of the World Design Organization, Luisa graduated from the Milan Polytechnic. She works with her own studio in Biella. She has carried out urban recovery, building renovation and urban planning projects, worked as an art director for companies in the furniture sector, and as a visiting professor for many design schools. She has written architecture and design texts and held conferences in Italy and worldwide. She participates in international juries and design promotion events around the world, and she will talk now about new steps in design. Please, Luisa, let's do it.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you very much. Hello to everyone. I'm Luisa Boccietta, architect and designer, and I live in Italy. Please put my photo the first slide, please. You have on the video? Thomas? Okay. And this is my work. You can look at many works I've done as an architect and professional. Go to the next one. I was president of the Industrial Design Association, ADI, the Italian National Association founded in 1956 and promoter of the Compassador Award, the award of the best Italian design created by Larry Nascente in the 50s and then entrusted to ADI. I was president from 2008 to 2014 for 2 terms. The next one, please. Since 2013, I have been a member of ICSID, the International Council of Society of Industrial Design. And from 2015 to 2017, I was president-elect, and then I became the president from 2017 to 2019. I finished just before the COVID period. I'm going around the world, and then I can rest a little. The next one, please. During my term as an international presidency, the World Design Organization has changed its name from ICSID to WDO, World Design Organization, and changed the goals. The work started earlier when I was in the board and still continue with the new presidency to adapt the task to the new challenges we face. The change of the name was not only a formal act, but it coincided with a deep reflection that I would like to share with you today through my contribution. The path from industrial design versus design. The next one, please. Design was born following the Industrial Revolution, which introduced new production methods and created the possibility for everyone to have functional and beautiful furnishing and objects. Previously, this opportunity was the prerogative of the wealthier classes, but with the Industrial Revolution offering the greatest amount of beauty possible to the greatest number of people was a winning bet, at least in the world that we know and frequent more closely. The design was born to give shape to industrially manufactured product and to integrate form and function in a resolute way. The next one, please. Form, follow, function. We know very well this slogan, and I had in a most beautiful way. And you can go with the next. And we use design to satisfy our needs and design. We use ergonomics and design for all. And we continue to increase our capacity to create the excellent product. Next one. The origin of design coincided with the establishment of the Bauhaus in the 20s. Today, we are in a century later. We have entered the first year after the centenary, and design has changed. It is changing. We will certainly continue to design beautiful chairs and refined furniture and cars, iconic and useful objects, but perhaps the task is greater for us. The discussion addressed in ICSID in the name change that transformed it into the World Design Organization was to evolve from the theme of industrial design to face that of design today. The word industrial disappeared in the title, not without some nostalgia, taking for granted that the industrial revolution belongs to our experience to embrace a broader design concept. We are today in a new revolution. We are not more in the industrial revolution, but we are in the digital revolution, the digital one, another technological revolution for another time that is changing the means of production, distribution, and consumption. Many jobs are no longer replaced by the new one. The way of communicating changed. Everything becomes faster and more immaterial. Dematerialization affects relationship between people, but dematerialization affects also in product. We are witnessing a process of weight reduction for transport, use of material for respect for available resources, consumption methods to reduce time and space wasted. Lightness, one of the words indicated by Calvino, who is an Italian writer, very famous, to describe modernity in his famous text, American Lessons, seems to me to define well one of the characteristics of the most current design. But behind lightness, dematerialization is the more important. The next one. And therefore, design is now concerned not only with product, goods, things, but more and more with processes and services. We have to do fewer things and do them smarter. We need to produce less pollution and find solutions to reduce waste. The design theme will be dealing with this approach. Sustainability become a third criterion alongside form and function that we know very well, and must enter into the whole process from design to distribution. The next one. Sustainability is not only environmental, but also economic and social theme. That is so important for me. The future challenge is to use the industrial design methodology that we know very well to apply it to the new research. The theme is to provide food, water, and services at the lowest cost for the greatest number of people without plundering resources. You know, we embrace the UN SDG goals, and the next, please. Oh, go back. Okay, this one. And in between the 17 goals that you know probably very well, there are some goals that are more related to our job as designer, as architect. The goals are related.
Please, 8 minutes.
Yeah, I finished very well. Okay.
Thank you.
We can contribute. Go in the next one. We can contribute to many of these goals. The new customer for designer can be institutions, foundations, cities that need strategic projects. Furthermore, technical factors are linked to human factor. If until yesterday the center of the discipline was man and his needs, and research has used ergonomics and design for all to meet his needs to the point of satisfying his dream and desire. Today, man must take a step back and put the planet at the center of the attention. There is no future without awareness and sustainability. There is no beauty without an ethics of responsibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Luisa. And sorry for breaking you up, but 8 minutes. But I think it's really good for the discussion later on. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let me introduce our next speaker, our second speaker, and I'm happy to have Kerstin Schoeck from Mexico City here with us. Kerstin is a founding member of Centro in Mexico City and also the director since its opening in 2004. She's an expert in strategy, innovation, and education, and is featured in the book Women of Design, Influence and Inspiration. Centro is a really very interesting institution for higher education in design, architecture, digital media, and film, located in Mexico City, as I mentioned before. And Kerstin is born as an Austrian and now stays since many years in Mexico City. But we are connected with a partnership of our universities. And I'm happy to have you here, Kerstin. And
ich habe die Kamera schon angeschalten. Verzeihung.
And please start your talk about reflections on the future of education.
Hello. Yes, you can hear me. And can you see me? Yes. Okay, great. This 8 minutes rule, and it requires extreme synthesis. And what I'll do, as I don't have the gift of extreme synthesis, I will just talk as fast as I can. I have the benefit of having had Stuart and Luisa before me, and they have touched on many very important issues, so I can go fast on that. This is just a slide to show you a little bit of Centro, the joy of learning. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. This is the campus. These are people in sort of normal circumstances, working and living and being at Centro. Next slide, please. And basically today, the future of design education is at the very heart of what we do at Centro. And I would like to add, not just after the pandemic or during the pandemic, I think it's been our quest ever since we were founded. We had the enormous advantage to be founded in 2004, so we're a relatively young university, and we're constantly thinking about this topic. But of course, the pandemic has made this thinking more urgent, more important. And what has happened is something very strange, because rather than coming up with more concise and clear answers, we have come up with more questions. And then we have actually seen that all the things that we take for granted, very much for granted, and that we think have been established for education, I think need to be questioned again. And so today I want to actually show you 10 of my personal 10 top questions that we should ask going forward. And I found this process extremely helpful for myself and hope it's beneficial to you also. But before I go into the question, I want to just mention 3 things. One is that I was extremely inspired by the title of this book, Measuring the World. Not sure if it's as good in English, but I read it in German, and it's a wonderful book about 2 of the great minds of the late 18th century. But the really interesting thing that resonated with me was the quest of knowledge, the quest of understanding the world, understanding how the world works. This very genuine, specific, and at the same time holistic curiosity to understand how we work and how we connect with the world. And I think this is one of the rather fundamental questions in education today. What is the objective of education? And we must re-examine this question moving forward. The second, can you go to the next slide, please? The second moment that was very important for me, and this is in a chronological order because this is almost 5 years ago, was a conference on creativity and artificial intelligence that we did. And because there were so many fabulous experts from all over the world at this conference talking about music and artificial intelligence, writing about artificial intelligence, the image, textiles, everything, I asked them, so what do you think are the pillars of education, and particularly creative education going forward? And they told me clearly, and it was very impressive sort of how they agreed on that. They said data and ethics. Data because it's becoming increasingly a common language, you know, in many fields in the world, and we cannot ignore that. And ethics because the decisions, as we all know, every decision has a cost, but the decisions that we have to take today are at a very big scale, and we cannot take them without being aware of the philosophical and ethical frameworks of the past, but maybe even of developing our own framework for the future. Can you put the next slide, please? So these two inspirations in the context of the challenge that we face, and both Stuart and Luisa already talked about them, so I'll just go to the next slide. And the problems and the forces that impact our future, you know, which are sort of related, the problems and the forces are very related. I put into a workshop that I did at Central. Next slide, please. This is a little bit the idealized version of this workshop, which obviously didn't happen like that. It happened more like the next slide, please. You know, where we were all working on basically thinking about the questions, the key questions for the future of design education. And I was part of the workshop and I worked in it as well. And I hope that everybody took away their key questions and that we learned from the questions of others. And questions have this wonderful quality of deeply examining the question, and then the synthesis might be, and I will apologize for that now, might seem oversimplified, but this is also important in terms of inclusiveness. So without further ado, I get to the questions. So what are my top 10, next slide please, what are my top 10 questions for the future of education? Next slide. The first one is a question that actually is not mine. It's from two fantastic thinkers, Beatrice Colomin and Mark Wigley. And they published this little book, which is called Are We Human? And I think it's the essence about the role of the designer, about the role of design. Please, everybody read it. And to summarize it, the book has a wonderful way of exploring. You can read it in a day. It's very short. It's a small book. But it has a wonderful way of exploring the interconnectedness and symbiosis between man and object, man and the world. It really speaks about the role of the designer in the interface between the human and the world, and what does it actually mean to be human. And there's a very beautiful quote by Judith Butler, which says, there ought to be recognition of precariousness as a shared condition of human life that links human and non-human alike. Precariousness implies living socially. That is the fact that one's life is always, in some sense, in the hand of others. So
Kerstin, so
yes,
we have 1 minute left. And we are we are on first topic, so I don't.
No, I'll just go to the questions, okay? Go
Cool.
to the next question, please.
Please.
How do we best learn with and from each other? This is not about competition versus collaboration. It's about learning as transformation, learning as generation, and we have to think that the problems that we need to solve today need non-linear thinking, and non-linear thinking is highly accelerated if we learn from each other, if the ideas build on each other. Next question. What are we evaluating? We're still in an evaluation system, 90% of the world, that prioritizes things like standardization, competition, time, all things that computers can perfectly do. And we need to think about the values that we're really looking for and new evaluation models. Next. Could diversity be our common ground? We have this role, the voice of the citizen today much more heard in everything from Me Too to Black Lives Matter, but also we are seeing a lot of problems in, right-wing white supremacy and all these kind of things. But the biggest problem is that most of these groups are value-based. They are. While we are increasing data and information in the world, we are actually focusing now much more on opinions and segments. And the question is, what kind of education could we have so that we can actually listen to each other, learn from each other, accept different opinions, accept diversity? How could an education system look? Next one. Can there be education without ethics? Clearly not. We have already answered this question. 6. What new roles are emerging in education? I think the roles in education, there's a lot of talk about the teachers, but we need to talk about everybody else in education also. We need to talk the role of the student, the support staff, and how these roles evolve together. Next. How does education connect with time and space? I think time is one of the great mysteries still today, and we have to think about the role of time in education as well as the role of space beyond, the building, the space in memory, space in terms of an empowering tool, space as a catalyst for connection. Next. Are you fluent in data? Already talked about it. Next. Who is paying? No small question. And I think we have to look at demographics. The world is will grow 2 billion until 2050, so not endless. Lots of us probably still be around. Out of this 2 billion, 2/3 will come from Africa. So where will the needs for education be, and who's going to pay for that? And the last question is the question, can you go to 10, that I started with. Are we educating for work or for life? There's a lot of talk of the future of work and the future of what is the next job, but I don't think we should educate for Google and Tesla. I really think we should create professionals that ask the right questions and help us solve them. Thank you.
Kerstin, thank you very much. You really rushed through 10 very important points, and I think we can take some of them over to have it in the discussion in a deeper focus. But I really did like the talk, because I think it's really what we have to discuss, especially the question who is paying. Yeah, it's a really important one, but all the others are also same important. And thank you very much for the talk, and let's discuss it in about 10 minutes. Yeah, thank you. So I introduce now our third speaker. It's Lorenzo Imbesi. Lorenzo Imbesi is an architect, PhD and full professor at Sapienza University of Rome, where he is also the director of the Sapienza Design Research in the Department Center and chair of the design unit of the Philosophical Doctorate Program. He is a member of the Cumulus Association Executive Board. He is organizing the Cumulus Conference in June in Rome. He is a member of the Executive Committee of European Academy of Design. He is a member of the board of Italian Society of Design, and he has been visiting professor in many international universities. Also, he is author of many papers in journals and books. Lorenzo will talk about design and education in the post-industrial age. Dear Lorenzo, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Karl. Thank you for invitation. Thank you for taking me to Graz, even if this is happening digitally. I really wish this is happening in the real life very, very soon. And it is, it's also a very good chance to meet back again Luisa Boccietta and Stuart Walker, and to meet for the first time Kerstin, which I know for the very first time. I will try now to share my screen. Let's see if I can do that. Yes. Okay. Can you confirm you see my screen? Okay. Designing for a post-industrial design. I decided to bring you some pictures from some of my projects, and maybe at the end, which I will go through very quickly, as quick as I can, and then do a couple of words of reflection about them. As already mentioned, okay, this is not working very well. Not sure this is not working. Sorry about that. Not sure why it's not going through. Okay, now it's set. Okay. Okay, I'm part of the Cumulus board for the second time, and we are organizing next conference. And Cumulus, as you know, it's collecting like more than 300 schools of design around the world. And it's an incredible chance to meet completely diverse systems of thinking, system of education, and of course of designing all around the world. We are just in a few days, we are opening the next 30 conference in Rome from the 8th of June. I am, before Sapienza University of Rome, I was chairing the Master of Interdisciplinary Design at Karl University in Canada, which was an incredible international interdisciplinary experience, because we were really getting students from different backgrounds. We were getting not only the designers, but we were getting also the engineers, people from marketing and from architecture and from psychology and so on. So I think it was a very good experience to better understand how much education can go through also research. Sapienza University of Rome is one of the educational hubs in Italy, which you can see here. Of course, Milano, which you already know, Torino, Bolzano, Florence, and Roma, where we have a Bachelor of Design and 2 masters. One of them is an international Master of Science in Product and Service Design. It's interesting because we really get students from anywhere in the world. So this is also internationalization is also challenging the design education. One of the projects I developed is Interactive Objects 1.0, where we're still working together with computer scientists in order to work on smart objects. Again, interdisciplinarity is a very interesting challenge we're getting in design education, and mixing up teaching with different people from different disciplines really is changing completely the approaches of education, of design education. As said, I'm chairing the Sapienza Design Research, which is meeting together 10 different departments, and not only the design department, but also computer science and the engineering and psychology for the user experience. And so we can see over there's a very big chance in order to understand what is the future of design education through interdisciplinarity. And we really believe that the third mission is coming to be one of very important missions after research and after education. The third mission is the bridge between research and the society. And that means that the education is becoming a sort of public good that is increasing the general level of well-being of society, and also the development of cultural, social, and educational and civil awareness. One of the projects we're having is Design at Punto Luce, which is a project we're developing together with Save the Children. And we're developing a number of different labs for small young adults, which is coming from serigraphy to the art of 3D, so 3D printing and modeling, stop motion, and robotic competition. And we really trying to understand what is, how can we teach in a very, very short time, very completely different ways of design, together with, again, the computer scientists and the psychologists. Here are some pictures of the first. Then we had also a project called Designing in Rome, Design Products for the Temporary Communities in Rome. We mapped a number of different temporary communities, which is communities which are using the public space in a temporary way. Like we had a group of people teaching Tai Chi in a park. We had a group of tango dancers teaching tango in a square of Rome in the evening. So we developed open studios together with these groups of people, together with our international students, in order to develop a number of different projects for them. And here you can see that at the end we had an exhibition together with the municipality of Rome. Here is a picture of the exhibition we had, including all the different prototypes of the projects. Here is another project we have with the Lazio region, which is called Urban Manufacturing, where we're trying to map all the different fab labs we have in the region of Lazio, so in all the different cities, and how they can network one each other, and how they can develop a new way of teaching. So we're pretty much looking into this kind of network, because they are hubs that are connecting together designers, policy makers, innovators, entrepreneurs, cluster managers, and makers together. And we can see really that this kind of practice is developing a new educational methods, which is connected together service design, open design, and all the different tools that design and the Fab Labs can give. Another project we had is Design for Next Lazio, where we connected together about 12 designers, 19 companies, 6 schools, and 14 professors. So we had an open call for the companies, where we had a number of companies responding, and we had the designers together, working together with the professors and the schools for developing innovation and projects for the companies. In the end, the best projects now are being prototyped from the companies, and very soon they are going to be produced by the companies. We got into the very, very end, so we really believe that we are starting to live in a society where everybody can potentially design. This is, of course, challenging the methods and the educational approaches, where the designer cannot act anymore the role of the positive hero as before, so he's not anymore alone, but he has to work with a number of people through society and through a number of different educational methods and approaches. And at that point, the designer might work as a sort of DJ or VJ while remixing and reprogramming all the tools and the object that he has in his hands. So at that point, the concept of post-production is emerging after the idea of production. That means that we end up having objects which are already produced, and the designer is reproducing, post-producing such projects. So this is the very, very last quotation, just to finalize my, my speech. This is a quotation taken from Graz in the 2003. The division between workers and their reificated work is therefore virtually abolished, since the means of production become appropriable and subject to be made in common. The computer seems to be a universal tool, universally accessible, through which the entire knowledge and every activity can be in common. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Thank you for this speech. It was also very interesting, and I think we have now a lot of stuff to discuss. I thought for the discussion we have 30 minutes, yeah, and if we have a very good discussion, I think we could go on some more minutes. But I thought at the first step, I would like, as the moderator, to ask all the speakers the same question, and we can do this as a first round. And in the second part, I think we could start to discuss with each other, and I also invite our audience to ask questions, and Andrea will support me. She will bring in the discussions from the chat. I start now first with my question, and it's something which I discuss a lot with my younger colleague from my institute, Daniel Fabry, who is the head of the master degree Communication, Media, Sound and Interaction Design. And of course, we are quite different because I'm 30 years older than he is, and so I came out from these old times when we thought we can change the world in the 70s, 80s, and live in different situations. And I often want to save the world, but my younger colleague Daniel, he said, I'm not sure if we should have this, he's a moralistic position, yeah, and he say, it's more about a position, not a position, about the attitude of the designer. What is the attitude of a designer? Do designers really need an attitude? And if yes, how can we teach this at universities? I think this is a really quite interesting question, especially if we focus on our students. And maybe Luisa, you want to start, or somebody else from you?
Yes, thank you. Sure, I think that design need to have an attitude, need to be curious, first of all, and then need to have an ethic approach now, because it's not more time to change the world, it's time to save the world. And I think young designer, but also us, we have a big responsibility in front of the future. And we need to do projects that can help to not create damage, no more damage. I think this is so important for me.
Okay, thank you. Who wants to go on?
I think Stuart should go on.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. Well, I think what part of what your question was, Karl, what is the attitude of the designer, and how can we teach this in the university? And maybe that second part of the question is part of the problem. How can we teach it in the university? Because one could ask, should design be taught at the university? Or should it be a different kind of format, a more practical, vocational format, where you learn to be a designer in a much more studio-based way, practical way? And certainly there is a case, I think, for opening up what we mean by education today, because as others have argued, it's become almost like a factory system in itself, where it's very, very competitive. And as Brian Kaplan has argued in his book, The Case Against Education, that it's overrated, time-consuming, and too expensive for individuals and society. And he kind of throws the cat among the pigeons, really, in his arguments. about our present modes of education being overrated, and argues for a more vocational approach to education, teaching practical skills that are socially valuable. And I think that's what designers can do. Practical, creative skills, knowing the skills of how to design and bring creative solutions to real world situations that are socially valuable. So ethical thinking and environmental responsibility, of course, should be part of that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Kerstin?
Yes. Well, actually, I wonder about that. I really wonder if we should go into a vocational situation. I more and more think that that what we should teach are important frameworks that serve beyond the vocational part. I do think that it would benefit everybody to know some of the principal frameworks of ethics, and these are basically philosophy. I think philosophy should be an essential part of design education. I also think that parts of technology, everything from coding to really thinking about the interface with technology is important. And in education, I think rather than throwing the whole idea out, I think we can throw the structures out. We can throw a lot of the present structures out. I completely agree. But I think that and now the pandemic in a way has helped us do that. In a wonderful ways has forced us to throw everything out. And so the resistance to change and innovation, I think, has been lowered tremendously. And this is an opportunity that we must take and really rethink everything from time to space to formats. But in terms of content, which is really the essence of everything, I do think that this idea of us in the world, of always putting us at the center of the world, has to be gone. And we have to more think about all the connections between all living organisms and the models from the past that can help us, to build on that and the way we can take this into the future.
Thank you, Kerstin. Lorenzo, would you like to add something?
Yes. Well, I guess it is not a problem of educational system which is changing. I guess the profession of the designer is still changing. If we can still speak about a profession of designer, because we have a number of multiple systems of professions which are growing up, and we have different kind of specialization and different kind of levels. The old kind of designer, which we know since the old century, that is changing into being a sort of innovator that is now working within industry and in the individual system in general. So not only even for industry, but also in the administration, for example, in the services and so on. That means that we need some kind of education which is much more specialized. So we cannot just leave it to the personal, individual, way of growing up, let's say. But we need a sort of scientific system that is helping to develop this kind of new characters of researchers and innovators. Just think about the fact that design is not taught only at the undergraduate, but also at the master level. And we have different kinds of masters with different kinds of specialization. And we have also the PhD. The PhD is developing not just designer, but that is developing researchers for design that can be involved not only again in the industry, but also in the administration and the service system and so on. And furthermore, additionally, we have also hybrid systems of education where we have design, which is somehow hybridizing together with other disciplines, like we're doing, for example, with psychology for the user experience, or with computer and science for interaction design. So we need a high level of research hubs where we can have this kind of brains that are working together for developing new educational system. So I would say that university at this stage is the best place where to grow up and where to develop this kind of, where to also to test and to invent new educational system, because we have this kind of resources, we have this kind of brains, we have these people who are spending the overall their life in order to for the education and to research. So it's not only a problem of personal growth, but it's a system where the new class of designers are growing up. And if we look into the new educational system, for example, in China, I mean, this is, we have the percentage is incredibly higher and higher. So we have to take this challenge and grow into this kind of line, I guess.
Okay, thank you. I would like to focus on one fact. Now with the pandemic, we all know how to discuss, and we also know how to teach, to give lectures online. But in fact, I personally hate this, because it's really boring, it's just boring. And I also are really not amused if my bosses at the university tell me, hey, Karl, digital first, and they really believe it, that's a system. But I think, and I think you all know this very, very provocative philosopher, Michel Serres, who died some years ago, and he wrote some years ago this very amazing book about the digital natives, And, I think he was about 90 years old. He was teaching in Paris and in London. And he wrote about how it is teaching in the digital age. And he spoke about that all the students, have the notebook open. And they are in Wikipedia and everything. And he spoke to the students. And when I wrote this, I remembered when I started as a young professor at the university, in the 70s, in the 80s, I started to teach, and I have had always in my seminars young ladies knitting. They were knitting. And all the time, clack, 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 clack. And I said, hey, ladies, what's up with you? Don't you listen to me? And they said, no, we listen to you. It's not a problem, We really listen to you. And the funny was, I thought if I talked something more interesting, they stopped knitting. And I told them, hey, what's up now? If I speak something very interesting, you stop, and the other, you are knitting. And it's similar, like I think with the internet generation. I like to teach with that because, the students, they have the possibility to check what you're talking, but your personality. And I think this is, for me, the link to the topic attitude. I think we as teachers, as professors, we have to have this attitude. The students have to see that we have an attitude and that we work, that we know what we are talking, and we just don't have it from books. It's a kind of, you live the designer. And I think this is really important for the students to check out that your professors, they are designers, and they have this attitude. And I think this is really important, I think. And after the online, now with the pandemic, it's more important, I think. Okay. Let's open up maybe the discussion now, because is there any questions from the audience, Andrea?
Yes, there is one question from Esma Begovic. She asks, I understand that we need to produce more locally, but I think the more pressing question is how to solve the problem of lack of local resources in poor countries or countries with unfavorable conditions for crops.
Who would like to answer? Maybe Stuart?
Yes, I mean that the lack of local resources is a real issue for a lot of people, but I think we also have to look at some of the historical reasons for that, and how things have gone in many countries over the last decades in this period of industrialization and colonialization and so on, that the world has seen over the past decades and centuries, and to look at some of the reasons why those resources are so lacking. Sustainable farming techniques in many parts of Africa were carried on for generations, and recent industrial and corporations moving in have turned them into monocultures, which are very, very precarious. In parts of Australia, for generations and generations, the Aboriginal peoples had sustainable farming techniques in a very difficult environment, growing grains and yams and sustainable farming techniques of animals, and all those things were destroyed with the colonialization by bringing in non-native animals, which changed the nature of the soils and created desert conditions in many parts of the country because of that. So restoring some of those traditional ways, but benefiting from what Sachs has called cosmopolitan localism, so a localism informed by voices from elsewhere and methods from elsewhere, can help to develop more context-appropriate sustainable ways forward, rather than a one-size-fits-all solution, which globalization tends towards. Because really, globalization is often economic globalization, but many of the designs and the products and the ways which are exported all around the world in a one-way delivery system are not appropriate to a lot of contexts.
Thank you very much. Kerstin, please.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful answer, and I would just like to add that yes, there will be a lot more stress on many resource poor countries because of population growth. You know, from what I said before, in Africa, we're growing from 800 million to 2.5 billion, you know, in 50 years. And so there's, together with all the problems, is also an increasing problem in terms of population growth in many resource poor areas. And I don't think that's in contrast with prioritizing local production and that. I think that can, you know, this is one question that we should solve. And then there is the other question of how should we all contribute, you know, to make the situation better in countries. And this is not just an ethical question. I think it's also a pragmatic question, you know, in countries that are defavored by everything from climate to geography to biology, maybe, you know. So if there's no resources, no growth, if there is a climate problem, and this is happening in Africa, you know, I mean, we have the ethical obligation. And I do think it's important to say that to do something about it, independently of everything that we do locally.
But isn't it in a way, we had, as Stuart mentioned before, we also had in our industrialized states, we had also these local sustainable communities before the capitalistic system was pushing through. And you can see it in my country that in the late 50s, they like in agriculture, they destroyed the old sustainability systems totally, because they said, okay, let's invest in just produce, because you have to like an industrialized agriculture production. And so I think and this is in the discussion for me, it's really important fact, because I know a lot of people and we know all a lot of initiatives, who try to make it better. But in fact, you know, that politics and the big economy, it seems like they just laugh about you with these initiatives, because they go on with the system, because the UN have the 17 sustainable goals, but in fact, what did happen, And this is really, I don't know what to do with that. Yeah, Luisa, please.
I think that the young generation are more sensible in front of these topics. And I know this period, the pandemic period, I think is important, because you can see white and black. People that want to, everything can become back as usual, and people that don't want that. And I trust in young generation, because they are more attached to the goals. For them is natural, and I hope that become a real way of thinking for the future.
I hand over to Andrea. There are some questions.
Yes, there's actually a comment from Eberhard Schrempf, and he said, we have to change the language, we have to change the narratives of design.
Thank you, Eberhard, for this comment. Do you agree?
I would say we have to consider other languages and other voices, because now we're having this discussion, and if you look at us, we're quite a homogeneous group, you know. I mean, if I look in the mirror, I can see that I'm over 50, and most of you are sort of there as well. And, you know, we are from the same, I live in Mexico, but I am from Austria, you know, and I think a real language discussion, or a real discussion even about resources and everything, has to include, as Luisa just said, you know, different generations. And I think it also has to include voices from different areas. So, you know, we can have an opinion here, but to have a real bigger picture, I think we need to hear different voices. And I think we need to be aware of that very, very much. And can I just say something, Karl, to your? I think we have to throw out these ideas of totally polarized views. You know, in terms of, oh, this doesn't work online, or this. I actually visited all the students during the pandemic 3 or 4 times, and it just works out that about 25% of online classes are extremely good and work extremely well. You know, so there are some classes that work online and some that don't. And in terms of, you know, I will say the structure or the government, we are the structure. We are the government. So, you know, we cannot see them as something apart from us. I know nobody wants to be the structure in the government, but we are, you know. So, you know.
I appreciate your positive view.
No, I think it's scary and negative, but I just think we have to take responsibility for who we are and what we put there. We cannot pretend we weren't part of it.
I think
if I could just,
yeah, please.
If I might, just coming in to respond to Kerstin. I agree. My experience on online teaching last year was great. Some of the best classes I've ever had, I think, certainly in terms of the student feedback. So I was a real skeptic, but it worked well for me. But just coming back to the theme of this thread, which is education and what we've been talking about since. And I would certainly agree with Kerstin that we need philosophy and ethics and things like that. But coming back to Kaplan's point about the nature of contemporary education and the need for other ways of looking at it, in other perspectives, other voices, in our research, which we've done research in traditional making practices in the UK, in America, and in China over the last few years, and we have found perspectives on design and making which have been incredibly enlightening. We've talked to ceremonial drum makers who are 12th generational ceremonial drum makers, and they bring perspectives to it that we generally don't think about. And the Halibut Hook that I showed in my slides, which is from the west coast of British Columbia by the First Nations people, that Halibut Hook, when you analyze the different aspects of that hook from a design perspective, it encapsulates so much which university education, in the way that we have our university education, fails to do, because it looks at the world in a holistic way. It's not divided up into departments and faculties that never talk to each other. It deals with all these aspects at the same time. So the halibut hook is a functional hook for catching halibut. It's sized to take a certain size of halibut, which is the males, so that you don't catch the females, because they've got the ones with the eggs, so they are the future generations. So it's got sustainability and resilience built in from that perspective. It's made out of completely natural materials, which are all renewable materials. And on it are carvings, and the carvings are of animals which transition between two worlds. So a turtle or a frog or an eagle or a raven that they live between the land and the water, or the land and the air. So it's about this transitional state, which is an allegory for the spirituality of the people, the transitional states between the physical and the spiritual, and also an allegory for the fish's journey as they journey out from the land onto the dangers of the unknown sea. And so built into that design, there are stories, there are myths, there are spiritual beliefs, there's ecology, there's sustainability, there's craft, there's aesthetic expression, there's functionality and utility. And it's all in one design, and they're all completely inseparable. So it's a holistic vision of the world. And our modern approaches to design tend to be, form follows function. We've heard it today. Form follows function, utility and efficiency and economic efficiency. And so much is left out of that picture.
I would like to ask one question to Lorenzo, because I found this quite interesting. Because Lorenzo, you spoke about the role of the design hero, yeah? And what I understand with that, it's that people more now work in collaboration, and the design hero, does it still exist? What do you think?
Yes, of course, the design hero is not existing anymore. I mean, designers now are involved in large groups of design. And then I would say that he has the duty to work also with with that character that once was considered the consumer, who is not anymore the consumer, but is a producer himself. So that is completely changing, let's say the character of the designer itself. So he has pretty much to get a sort of low profile, I would say, in order to be open, to develop open groups of design. I would like to go back on the former question before I was trying to get into the discussion. Well, I think that something we got back from pandemic, which is a crazy time, is that we need science and we need technology and we need design to pull together. If we now can get a vaccine, is because we have science, it is because we have technology, it is because we have production and distribution, and we have also designers that try to understand, the organization that can be behind that. And all the period we have been living, we're still living behind that. We've seen incredible experiences where the designers were working into the hospitals to develop new pumps with the mask for the oxygen and all these kind of things, and producing them in the fab labs. So that is an incredible experience that is teaching us how much designer can work together with the scientists who are, still keeping us alive, the people who are developing the technology, which is pretty much making science something feasible, and the designers that can work dialoguing with different languages, who are the best people who can speak with the doctors, who can speak with the engineers, who can speak with the scientists. They can develop an open language that can be weaving in the middle of all of this. And in order to also to answer to the very first question that was raised before, design has the duty nowadays to understand what is the best technology, to bring that technology in those places to build open devices, open design projects for the people, for bottom-up open design projects. We have now the chance to really develop a new way of life, a new society for them, a new system of development that can really help the people in place to develop a new kind of system for themselves. We know the technology, we can develop the projects, and we can make that feasible and available.
Thank you, Lorenzo. Andrea, do we have a question from the audience? Please, Luisa, just let's go to the audience and then I'll come back to you.
Yes, thank you. John M. Jeep asks, should or can a redesign of education address all levels, so preschool to graduate studies?
I was not concentrated now because John M. Jeep, I was thinking. He was studying in my hometown at the high school, and he's living now in the US, and we every year one time we mail each other, and now he's in the talk. That's fantastic. Please ask me again.
His question is, can redesign of education address all levels, from preschool to graduate studies?
I think we should do that, and I think my colleagues will agree, because we have to. I think we have to do it permanently, because it's so much going on in that world, and we have to all the time think about it, evaluate it, discuss what are the needs, and we have to do it also with the students together, and this is really important. We in our institute, we start with this reaccreditation next in this year, because there are a lot of changes in the design, and we have to adapt it at the university. This is really very important. Okay, I think. Excuse me, Luisa, please. You.
But wait a second, Karl. There's an important thing. First of all, Luisa, you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
And about this question, there's an important comment. Luisa, you were first, so please go.
Luisa?
I don't understand. It's a question to me?
No, you wanted to say something before.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you can go. You can go. No problem.
No, I just wanted to say what you just said, Karl, is the actual problem, the accreditation system. And I actually think, contrary to should we also do this in primary education, I will tell you, in primary education, there's a lot more innovation than on university level. My two girls go to school where every year before the school starts for 1 week, they talk about how do we learn, they study the brain, they talk about amazing things, and I have to say I copied them, in the university. There's a lot of innovation happening in primary education because the structures are more free, they're not so complex, the education is not so complex, and they're more free to work. So if you go into a lot of schools, you will actually see amazing teachers, amazing visionaries changing things at this level, which I hopefully would be.
It depends all on the persons, who are teaching.
But it's still much more possible, even on a structural level. It's much more, and we can be very controversial. Yeah. I'll just be very controversial for a second. There is some issue around that in terms of being private or being public, because changing in a public system is unbelievably complex. Yeah. Changing in a private system is still a little bit easier.
But as University of Applied Science, we are privileged because it's not the, more than 300-400 years tradition of the universities. But I have now to give to Luisa, please.
Yeah, I want to add this thinking that there is an important role for designing, that is humanizing the technology. And that is important because when we talk about different different aspects, the fundamental is to matching aesthetical things with humanistic things with technology and engineering vision. That is a great role for design, and I think in that moment become more important.
Okay. I think we should come to an end now with the discussion. Does anybody of you wants to have a remark, or can we close? What? Because if we close, I would like to have a little input at the end of our session. But first, I say thank you to you for the talk and for the discussion. I think we really have to go on with that. It's really important, and I think if you work with at universities or at universities of applied science and also in high school, it's really important to go on with the discussion, and to develop it. And I have one, I would say, I want to bring it now into the discussion. I think you all speakers know the book. It's a book just published some months ago. It's the White Book on the Future of Design Education. I think you know it. It's edited by the IF Design Foundation, and it's called Designing Design Education. And the very interesting fact of this book is that it was a project for about 3-4 years, and they invited designers, people from all over the world, and in each of the continents they started to discuss the topic of design education. And they made a really good book with a lot of very instructive ideas. And I think one of our speakers participated, Angus. He will be tomorrow with Sigrid in the panel. And I really appreciated this book very, very much. And I would like to end up with a few points which I want to bring at the end of the discussion. And I would like to tell you that the first is they discussed principles of how to do it. And one very important is that between the twin poles of short-term teaching and long-term training, the primary task of design universities is described as a societal activity. Like we said, design education must heighten awareness among students for underlying values and reinforce their powers of critical appraisal. That's the first. The second, one really key challenge of the degree course arises from the situation whereby not all the creative design and technical foundations can be taught in advance. Mastery of these basics, however, influences comprehension, conceptualization, and creations in the sense of a reciprocal relationship. Third, a very important challenge lies in fulfillment of the objective whereby the group made up of teachers and students is formed in such a way that it is as diverse and inclusive as possible. We also spoke about that. For design processes, diversity is considered an enriching success factor. A selection process based on portfolios, just on portfolios, is seen to be inadequate for assessing the personality and the potential of applicants appropriately. Fourth, the design degree must reflect the fact that the knowledge conveyed is made up of merely provisionally assured findings, the validity of which is not lasting. Successful solutions from the past are no current guarantee of a reliable prognosis for future tasks. And the last, the specific activity and the circumstances of design practice are changing constantly and very rapidly. Design education continually lags behind this development. The design degree must react to the fact that new practices are continually developing that are not taken into account in teaching, and that a degree is no longer necessary for established practices since the knowledge is universally available online, or such practices can be carried out by the automated systems. I really invite you to discuss the topics of the book. I really appreciate it very much, and we will bring it in our discussion. Okay, thank you again. I want to give a short invitation and preview for tomorrow talks. We start at 2:30 p.m. with panel 2, Changing Urban Climate. And this is co-rated and moderated by Bernhard Buttinger from the Green Tech Cluster Styria. And Bernhard Buttinger invited 3 speakers, Karl-Heinz Beuger from the Brief Earth Collective, Aglaé de Croo from the Technical University Institute of Urban Development, and Daria Maiskaya from the Energy Styria. And afterwards, we close with panel 3, Designing for People is the topic. And this is co-rated and moderated by my colleague Sigrid Bürstmeier from our institute. She invited Mariana González de la Rosa from the Universidad Iberoamericana in Puebla, Emanuel Barbosa from the Arte Matosinhos in Porto and the ESAT College of Art and Design. And speaker 3 is Angus Campbell from the Elam School of Fine Arts at the University of Auckland. I think we will have fruitful talks and discussion. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you to all the speakers and have a nice evening. Bye-bye.